Welcome to the Make Space for Growth podcast. My name is Sara Vicente Barreto and I'm your host. I'm a corporate strategist, problem solver, social entrepreneur, writer, mom of two, and passionate for growth. At home, in business, or in my community. This is season 2 of the Make Space for Growth podcast, a moment of lift. 2020 will be remembered by most as the coronavirus year, and it has not left us in 2021. Our journey continues, strengthened by what we leave behind, hopeful for what lies ahead. From a good, bad, or so-so 18 months, we rise to the challenge ahead. We lift our souls to believe, we lift our minds from this fear. We lift our lives from the dark times that we leave behind. This is our moment of lift, as we get out of this crisis stronger and together. 2021 has been a long year already, but sometimes it feels like it's turning. As such, for this season, I go after a moment of lift. I restarted my virtual travels around the world to speak to women leaders on the change they experienced and how they see the path forward. We will be talking about the moment where we find ourselves as we choose to effect change. The moment of turning around and choosing to move forward and facing life fearless and joyful. Join me for this journey to find out how, because it is time for hope and light. Joining us today, I have Jenna Stein. She grew up in a middle-class family where her parents instilled in her sustainable values and a circular approach to fashion. In 2020, she graduated from Ryerson University with a bachelor in social work, and it was only in 2009 that she made her way for the first time to Berlin. It wasn't until November 13 that she and her partner decided to move permanently to the city. It was there that she founded her organization, Berlin Clothing Swap, both as a way to meet new people and to exchange clothing. As Berlin Clothing Swap grew, so did the emphasis on sustainability and education around the fashion industry. Living in a city that encourages sustainable practices has helped BCS thrive, with a growing demand for more swap events every year. Today, we're going to talk about the movement, the path forward, and also life through the pandemic. Let's dive in. All right, Jenna, welcome to the Make Space for Growth podcast.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
So before we go and talk business, may I ask you, what was your favorite thing to do as a child and what did you want to be when you grew up?
So my favorite thing to do as a child, I guess, was waking up on Saturday mornings and watching cartoons. They're the best cartoons in the 90s. So yeah, that I loved doing that. And what I wanted to be when I was a child is I wanted to be an actress. So I wanted to perform either for films or for theater.
My daughter's a bit like that. Were you also always doing little shows for everyone around you?
Yeah. I was actually part of this organization called Characters Theater Troupe, and we would perform every year like a different play. So one year we did like the Pajama Game, one year we did Oliver. I think one year we even did Fiddler on the Roof, and it was just like the best experience. You had to audition for a role, and I loved it. Performing night was the most exciting night of my life as a child because it's, big production. Your parents are coming to see you, you're on the stage. It's exciting,
I wanted to start maybe first going back a little bit in time. A few years back, you decided to exchange Toronto for Berlin. Mm-hmm. It was a significant life change, to say the least. And that may feel very close to home. I mean, before we hit record, we were just talking about a big move I have coming up. Can you talk about that experience? What triggered your move? And how that all went?
We had been coming to Berlin almost every year since 2009. And my partner, his sister, lives here with her husband. And so, we would come here, and the city is just so cool. It's so young. It's so open-minded and so free. What happened was in 2011 to 2012, we took a year off. We traveled around the world. And when we came back to Toronto, we decided after a year of living in Toronto that we wanted to move back to Berlin. I was very much open to moving to Berlin because, I'd always wanted to live in Europe. I wanted to have that European experience. Initially, I had actually wanted to move to London, but it just didn't work out the way that I was hoping it would. So Berlin offered so much opportunities and possibilities for us. So this was kind of the motivating factor, but it really was only supposed to be for a year. Yeah, we moved here in 2013, so it's been a while. It's been like 8 years now. So yeah, it's we call Berlin home now, but who knows, that could also change in the near future where we like to move around a little bit, but for now we're happy in Berlin.
It feels like me. I came to London for a year 17 years ago.
Yeah.
So
it was for a year, right?
It was just to try it out. Why not? So Jenna, you're business development manager by day.
Yeah.
But you also have a side project, which is kind of the key thing I wanted to talk about today. Because I do try and bring entrepreneurial ventures, led by women into the podcast. Sometimes they're business, sometimes they're still ventures, sometimes they're big businesses. And you have the Berlin clothing swap.
Yes.
Can you tell me what is the movement about and why are you so passionate about it?
Yeah, so it's all about, education and sustainability. So really teaching people about circular fashion, kind of educating people about the hazards of fast fashion and of that industry and, the impact that it has on the environment. And also, kind of teaching people that buying something new doesn't mean it's buying something better. And you can actually find your entire wardrobe at one of our swap events. So it's offering kind of an alternative way to shopping and still educating people and just making people more aware of the potential that swapping does have.
I think in concept, the idea makes sense. And I think we're hearing more and more. I think there was in the FT weekend a couple of weeks ago, there was this big article about how hand-me-downs were becoming they were becoming trendy for children, because we only used to think of the hand-me-downs from, the cousin or which, my children are awash with. That is actually 90% of the wardrobe in the house. I'm very lucky with being the younger sister, having that. But it's becoming more and more of a habit for children where, it probably even makes more sense because it all goes so fast. But let's go back to, a bit of the behind the scenes, because I'm always a bit curious about how you go about these things.
Yeah.
So you decide you want to do this movement. You're in a new city, and shortly after you move, you decide, all right, I'm going to do a clothing swap event. What was the idea you had at the time, and how did it go actually?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I first moved here, I really didn't know anybody. I didn't really have many friends. I didn't have so much clothing, and I didn't also have a lot of money. So I thought, this would be kind of a great way to meet new people. And it really kind of began more as a social event. I needed a purpose. I needed a passion. I needed to kind of find myself in Berlin. So I started this organization, Berlin Clothing Swap, but it took kind of a few different turns before getting to what we are now. Initially, I started on a community called meetup.com, and it was just a way to meet up with like-minded people. And so the first swap event that it's so hard to call it an event because what happened was one person showed up. I didn't advertise it properly. I wasn't using social media. I wasn't on Instagram or Facebook. So I was just kind of put it on meetup.com, promoted it a little bit, but we ended up doing the event at Volkspark Friedrichshain, which is this big park in Berlin. And I had no signs. I had no sort of like, here I am, Berlin Clothing Swap. But one person did find me, and and
you took someone along, so you were 3. I think you can call it an event.
Yeah, I forced my my boyfriend to come with me. I just didn't want to sit in a park alone, and he was such a good sport about it, and he came and he showed up, and he stayed the entire time, to his credit. The fun thing is we did actually exchange a bit of clothing. I don't know if she took any of my stuff, but I ended up taking a bunch of her stuff, and we had a really nice conversation. And it made me realize that if I put just a little bit more effort in, if I, do a little bit more promotion, if I really make it something, this could actually grow into something, because Berlin is a great place for organizing something like this, because people here are very open-minded about sustainability. The idea of hand-me-downs and secondhand fashion is actually quite strong here in the city. It's also, you need to consider too that wages are lower here. compared to, the rest of Western Europe. People don't necessarily have so much money to be buying new clothing or to really, have the items that they want to have. So this gave people that possibility to find items that they need or they want. And so this is kind of the background of why this all kind of began. So really, one could say it really began as a way to meet friends.
I'm sure you're always going to remember the person that showed up to that first event. If she hadn't showed up, it might have been different.
It might have been different. I might have given up completely. Now, unfortunately, I don't remember her name, but I do remember she had the cool job. She worked as a costume designer for like a puppet theater. But yeah, she was my saving grace. She hadn't come.
Absolutely. And so it took you 2 years to organize your next event.
Yeah.
Why did you wait so long? But then what were the big differences by then in how you went about it?
I was still kind of struggling with how I wanted this to be. Did I want this to be a lifestyle kind of thing? Did I want this to be a community? Did I just want this to be events? I was really struggling with which direction I wanted this to go in. But it was only kind of once I actually broke my foot that's when it really exploded, because I had the time to do it. But we did host an event in 2016 at the community center. And I think from that experience, I realized as well, again, that it could be even bigger. I just, again, had to be more focused and dedicated to start planning it, because these take time to plan.
It's very funny how you say it took you breaking your foot to actually have the time to do it, because we always like to say that we are all very good about our priorities and our values, but then actually it takes, something like that, or a global pandemic.
It's the pause in our lives, I think, that allow us to kind of reflect on what paths we see ourselves going down, and it was a blessing in disguise. I will put it as that, because that really kind of changed everything for me. That's when we went on to social media. That's when I had time to understand Facebook a little bit better, because I am a Facebook virgin. I only got it in 2017. I had no idea how to use it. I mean, I don't really even use it personally for myself at this point. It's only for the events.
You've started to highlight some of the changes in 2016 that you've done when you've done that second event. Other things did you do different that that led you to say, all right, this actually could be something big? You have one person, or did you have lots of people?
At the second event, we actually had quite a bit of people. We also got sponsored by a company called Swapadoo. I don't actually know if they're in business anymore, but they brought a bunch of t-shirts, they brought some food and some drinks for everybody. And again, I was still kind of understanding how I wanted to plan this. So the events, I mean, I had to pay a lot of money to rent out this community center. And I was like, it was coming out of my own pocket. I'm like, well, there's got to be a better way to do this, But the way that we had set it up was, it was very different from how we do it now. So instead of everything being kind of open for everybody, what we did was everybody who brought something would have their own section to showcase the items that they have brought. And because we would only have maybe up to 20 people coming to that event back in 2016, it made sense to do it like that. But that's now, of course, it's had to change now, because we can't have sections for all the people that attend the swap events to have their own little, like, here's my clothing section, So now that would be one of the big changes, is that whoever comes to the swap event, if they bring clothing, they have to drop it off before they go into the swap.
No, so that's interesting, as you got us started in talking about how you're doing it today.
Yeah.
So you did this event and you thought, all right, this could be something big. And you mentioned to me before that then in 2017, that's when it really took off and you started doing this bigger event. So I know COVID happened in the meantime, and we're going to talk about that, but let's just pretend it's not happening right now.
Yeah.
And so how does it work? How I want to go to a swapping event. What do I have to do? Do I have to pay? Do I have to contribute? And where does the clothes come from? And what happens to all the clothes?
Those are really great questions. I mean, and the thing is, a lot of people ask those questions. So it's good that we're talking about it, because, these are the important things to consider. So ultimately, this is a free swap event, provided that you bring a minimum of 5 items of clothing. I've spoken with my volunteers. I also, adhere to German law. So from what we understand is people can't come without anything. They can't come empty-handed. So minimum 5 items of clothing. If they don't bring 5 items of clothing, then there's a €5 entrance fee. Either way, there's no limit though on how many items you can take home with you. So, you come, you bring your clothing. Let's say you've brought clothing, you bring your clothing, you drop it off at the sorting table. You come in, you kind of get the spiel about, how the swap works. So, you can take as many items as you want. You can generally leave as many items as you want. You're welcome to try on some clothing. If you and somebody like the same item of clothing, you guys have to figure it out yourselves. It's first come, first serve. But essentially, it's a shopping experience. So, when you go to I'm going to use this example, but when you go to H&M, let's say, does somebody limit how many items you can take? No,
Really?
Nobody limits it. You limit it yourself, So that's what I wanted. I'm not a fan personally, and this is a personal thing. I'm not a fan of the swap organizations where, you get credits. So you drop off 5 items, you get 5 credits, so you can only choose 5 items. The way I look at it is we have so much leftover clothing at the end of the swap that I'd rather people take what they want and enjoy it. And the thing is, you can always bring it back to the next swap event too.
And you have a fair amount of, if you do have this sustainability angle to it, you do have a fair amount of self-consciousness that goes into people choosing how many items they actually take home.
Exactly, yeah.
You have the outliers, but you probably end up with, with having some self-regulation in the system.
Yeah.
I didn't ask you that one, but I think it is a question that probably people would have is, are people just bringing their old clothes and I'm not going to get anything that is like nice to wear? How do you sort it through? Because obviously people will bring things that work and things that don't work.
Yeah. But that's why we have the sorting table. So, we really encourage people, please do not bring like dirty clothing, ripped clothing, it should be generally of good quality. If you do bring something, we will donate it to a textile plant, generally because now we have the sorting table. And this was kind of a new thing that we did a couple of years ago to sort out, because we would get some weird items, like really weird items. And we just give them back to people too. If we're really unhappy with the items that people have donated, we'll say, sorry, we're not a drop-off center. If this stuff is not wearable, please go to this place and you can drop it off. We have to be a little bit stricter with that, but I have to say, the people that attend our swap events so far, we have never had an issue like that. Yes, maybe 1 or 2 people have brought in accidentally a sock that's just not, usable, or makeup that's been used before. But at the end of the day, we find solutions for that as well. But we don't want to discourage anybody from coming. So we try and create like a nice atmosphere. So even if you do bring something, we try and take care of it ourselves.
And what do you do with all the leftover clothes?
Yeah, so great question. Leftover clothing, we find organizations in Berlin that are looking for items and we donate them.
Okay, so it all eventually finds a home. I was wondering if you have this big warehouse at home that you keep for the next event.
Sarah, that's the dream. One day I would love to do that. That's my goal going forward, is to have, because I've given away some things that I've been like, somebody would have taken this for the next swap event.
Absolutely. So we spoke a bit about the history.
Yeah.
But let's go deeper into some more recent things and how you've worked that out.
Of course, yeah.
There's been a pandemic that's affected businesses everywhere, good or bad. It's kind of still here hanging out. When lockdown kicks in, it means you have no events. You're talking about people trying on clothes if they want. And I'm thinking, oh my God, where is that?
Yeah. Right.
What is that about? And I know you're not a business just yet, but it's still something you were creating and growing and it was taking shape and scale. Mm-hmm. What happens when COVID hit?
So when COVID hit, it was actually at a really bad time for us because we were planning our next swap event, but we realized that we needed a way to stay relevant and to stay important and to still keep promoting that swapping energy, So we created the Berlin Clothing Swap Facebook group. So it's all about swapping online. So we created a private Facebook group for anybody who wanted to join. And here you can post the items that you'd like to swap, but it's up to you how you and the person that you're going to swap with are going to manage this. So I actually did this. I ended up posting a couple of items of clothing, and another girl had posted a few items of clothing on the Facebook group. And we ended up contacting each other. We met somewhere in Berlin and we just traded items. We didn't get a chance to try it on until I got home, and the same with her, but everything worked out really nicely, and it shows that it can still work, and it was done safely because, I was wearing a mask when I met her. We kept our social distancing. And it was pretty cool. And I know a few other people who are part of this group who've also done the same thing. And it does work. It does work. But the nice thing is too, is Berlin Clothing Swap kind of was like, we're taking our hands off of this. So it's really up to, the people to decide how they want to do this. So, one girl was even like, listen, I don't need any clothing, but I want to get rid of all of this. If you want to buy me like a vegan chocolate bar, that can be payment enough. And if somebody's happy with that, then that's fine. We do not want to make so many rules, because the more rules you have, I feel, the more people kind of take a step back and be like, okay, so we can't do it like this and we can't do it like this. So just make it free for everybody. So this is how we've been able to stay relevant during the pandemic. We also had some good press during the pandemic. So, and we were able to host one event. We just had to do it really safely. We even offered a box of gloves for people who wanted to wear gloves. You had to wear a mask during the entire event. And we were also featured in a magazine from the Ex-Berliner, which is an English-speaking magazine, about we were mentioned as the best clothing swap in Berlin. So that's pretty cool,
Oh, that's cool, because I think last year I did. That's actually how I started the podcast. Hard to say that it was a year ago. It doesn't feel amazing, but a lot of good things happened because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And people actually, in the middle of bad things, they did some decisions that changed their businesses in ways that wouldn't have not happened before. And I guess you created the Facebook group, the online swapping, direct swapping, which many people might not risk if they were a business trying to to make that money in the swap, but at the same time, at the moment you're still on the movement stage. And then you got the good press. Were there any other things that you changed or that you see different now, but maybe for the best, because you have to make some of these decisions in the pandemic?
For now, there's not really much, I would say. We're actually getting ready to host our first swap event of 2021, August 8th. So it will be interesting to see how kind of that all goes. And if there are any changes then going forward that need to be made. I mean, one of the things we've always encouraged people to please wash your clothing before bringing it to the swap. But now it's like, no, you need to wash your clothing before you bring it to the swap event. Things like that. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say there's so many different changes that really can be made with the swap event. The other thing is maybe we just limit how many people we have at one time coming in, things like that, to make it more kind of COVID safe,
Absolutely. And so you've been getting this movement going for a few years with a few starts and stops. What were the most difficult decisions you had to do during this more entrepreneurial journey?
Letting go of some responsibilities, I would say. Trusting people. So I have an amazing social media girl. Her name's Catherine, and she's based in Quebec. I was very nervous to kind of give her the reins, but I trust her. She's done an amazing job. But that was a big step for me because I was managing everything on my own prior to that. So yeah, just kind of giving that responsibility to somebody was a big step for me, and one that I really do not regret. It was the right decision. I do not know social media. I'm not a marketing person. So anybody who has those skills coming in is always very helpful. I mean, the other scary thing is, and one thing that we're still in the process of trying to do, and that COVID kind of, put a stop to for a time being, was getting registered as an official nonprofit in Germany. This is a very bureaucratic country. And one of the things you need to do is have 7 signatures of your founding members. And as I am the only founding member of this organization, having people sign that document and be a part of that, it makes me nervous because, this is my baby, and the idea that maybe somebody could come and take it away from me at some point, it's always a little bit, you think about it. And I've spoken with all the volunteers, and they understand that this is, they're in no way responsible for anything. The liability is all on me, but you just never know. I feel like any business owner would kind of say letting go of some of the responsibilities would be the scariest thing that they've done. And knowing that you're really the only person responsible for it in many ways. So if something happens, if something goes wrong, the onus falls on me and not on anybody else.
The delegation piece is a big founder's dilemma.
Yeah.
At any time. So, I know it don't run it as a for-profit business, and you've just mentioned you're registering as trying to register as a charity, which I imagine is a fair amount of pile of paperwork. What is in the future for Berlin Clothing Swap? What's the next step? How do you see it taking it from here?
Like in my vision for Berlin Clothing Swap would be that we host going forward, we become an official organization in the city of Berlin. We can host also some more smaller events, some more themed events. So one of the ideas I had was like a Halloween swap, because I don't believe in buying Halloween costumes. I think it's a waste of money, a waste of, just so many problems with Halloween costumes. We should be sharing them, but things like that, hosting swap events for, plus sized, people, like doing more themed ones. And also listening to the people and what they want. And then a lot of people have suggestions for swap events, ideas. So, a big part of it is also having the time, because, I do have to work a full-time job. So this is something that is, I do on the side, but that takes up a lot of my time, but I love doing it. So I'm happy to do it. Yeah. And, turning this into a business, essentially being able to maybe quit my job and do this full time, because this is what I love to do. And sometimes it's okay to, pursue what you do full time. And, that's what my partner does. He loves music, so he pursued it full time. And sometimes I'm like, maybe I should do it. I'm just glad I didn't start it back in 2020 when I was like, maybe I should quit my job and do this. That was honestly the best decision, was sticking with my job and still doing this on the side. But we'll see what the future has in store. I'm open to anything. Even, coming in as like working at Vogue for their sustainable department, like that would be I guess that would also be the dream.
Dreams can take different shapes.
Exactly. I have a lot of dreams, Sarah.
That's good. So, you got to start it on the dream. So let's move to a more personal level. I started a bit with COVID to place it, but just as a bit of stepping stone to talk about, a little bit of the last year.
Yeah.
We already spoke about you being in Berlin. Can you talk a little bit what happened in Berlin when lockdown hit? How were the restrictions and kind of what the overall situation was where you were?
When COVID hit Berlin, we were actually in Ireland taking my first vacation after I'd passed my probationary period at work. And when I came back, that's when I had to go into a 2-week quarantine. There was a part of me that was like a little bit relieved, because it meant things had to slow down. And I felt like things were going so fast for so long. Everything was just moving so quickly that it forced us to take a pause and to kind of breathe. And the whole situation is horrible, but a part of me, there's a part, the introvert part of me was very happy in a way that forced to stay home and forced to take a pause. I also didn't hate the working from home. It would take me 45 minutes with public transportation to work. I loved the fact that I could work from home. I just needed I needed the proper equipment to do my job properly, which I still don't have. But in terms of a chair, everything else is fine. Work has provided me with everything, but it's my own work chair that is the issue. But yeah, I mean, it seems so long ago now when it first hit that I can't, it seemed a little bit gradual still. So at first we could do all these things, but you had to, keep distance. And then we could do all these things, but you had to keep distance and wear masks. And then, the summer came and things were open and you could do kind of whatever while still wearing a mask. And then come November, everything just got shut down. You can't go shopping, you can't go to the hairdressers.
So it didn't shut down for the first wave?
No, everything, I think, and I could be wrong, I just honestly can't remember at this point, but I think everything generally remained open, but with restriction. But yeah, from November 2020, that's when everything went into full lockdown. Everything was shut down. I mean, again, a part of me was the part of me that likes socializing and sitting in a restaurant, having a coffee with my friend or a drink with my friend. That part was very happy about all of this. But again, I was able to save some money. I was able to, perform a bit better at work. Focus more on work. I had more work opportunities. I got a promotion from all that. From my experience, this whole pandemic has sucked, but it could have been worse. I know a lot of people out there that have had a much worse experience. My heart really goes out to them, because this has been the worst year of their lives. For me, the saddest part was not being able to see my family for so long.
And so, especially in the part where you were kind of like in pure lockdown, lots of people started new stuff. People started baking, people started doing puzzles, coloring by numbers, learning a new language. Did you do something new? Did you start something new?
Well, I've always been into paint by numbers. So yes, I did buy a paint by numbers. I have a Marilyn Monroe one that I painted. I'm working on an Audrey Hepburn one right now, and it's amazing. So yeah, I did paint by numbers. I bought a few coloring books. It really helps me to de-stress. And I love coloring. I love painting. I'm not good at it, but it doesn't matter because I enjoy doing it and it takes away the stress for me. The other thing that my partner and I started doing together was some yoga. So we would actually especially around the Christmas time, we were doing yoga nearly every day. And that was really helping just with our mood and feeling more flexible. We also got some games. My parents sent a care package with, Jenga and Scrabble, a game called Code Names that we could play with anybody online, anywhere in the world. So this was also something that we did. And honestly, just indulging and watching television that we enjoyed and just finding those moments to find some comfort and some happiness, even in the smallest things, even if it was putting on a face mask, I would find happiness in that. And it's just, a lot of it is a state of mind. But, in times like that, I would turn to the things that would make me feel better, like painting.
In the end, it gives people an immediate outcome of something you can control, right? And I think we were a lot in need of let's just go with one thing that we can control.
Exactly. One step at a time, one day at a time, As we know with COVID, things will change in a second.
I know you've said you've missed, what you miss the most right now is your family.
Yeah.
But in the day-to-day life, you spoke about the introvert in you and you spoke about the extrovert in you. What did you miss the most?
Okay, so the extrovert in me missed, going to clubs, going to parties, being able to meet up with more than one person, feeling like that, what am I missing out? I'm 32 years old. I'm in the, what does one say? I'm in the time of my life, I'm sorry, I have no children, so I can do whatever, The extrovert in me missed that. I missed that. I missed getting dressed up. I missed, putting on makeup to have somewhere to go to. I missed life a lot. I missed that. But the introvert in me loved how much time my partner and I were spending together and just how we got along so well during this pandemic. And, I loved the Saturday nights we would sit on the couch and watch movies together and laugh. And honestly, I liked also the walks that I would do with friends too. I liked, I did like the meeting up one-on-one, having that more personal experience, going for coffees and really just having, those heart-to-heart conversations. And also being able to cancel things if I wasn't up for it. I feel like post-pandemic, people were really pissed off if you canceled plans last minute or whatever, which I totally understand. But it just felt during the pandemic people had to be a little bit more kind of understanding, a little bit more empathetic. And there were going to be days where I'm tired. I've worked all day. I don't want to go for a walk. It's -5 degrees outside. I'm exhausted, I'm tired, and I want to stay home and take care of me. And I feel like, people really understood that. And I was also way more understanding of people too during this time.
Yeah, because it is something that Berlin had different. And I know because we have a common friend, that you're allowed to meet people one-on-one for most of it, which was not the case unless you were a single household. For instance, in London, you were only allowed to meet someone else to walk if you were part of a single household and they were part of your bubble. So it was not as limiting. So I guess here we were just used to not having any plans at all, really. So we know the pandemic has brought, great struggles and you've got us started in some of that and some of that attitude. This season is really about how we look forward, how we lift ourselves up, and mental health is always something I bring up, and you started talking a little bit about that. I'm keen to talk and be open about, okay, what tools work for people, how do they manage through, and because sometimes for us to have the ability to kind of look forward and see possibilities, sometimes it's help seeing others and how they cope. Not that we have to copy everyone else, because what works for one is not for other, but it does help. Can you share maybe, what was your high point and your low point during this pandemic journey? if we can call it such, if you don't mind. And
of course,
professional, up to you.
My high point during the pandemic, it is actually a professional one. I know that's silly, I think, but it wasn't silly for me. I had brought in a client for my job, and this was one of the biggest deals our company's ever seen, and I do outbound for my job. This was the moment I felt like, so coming into this field is very new, was very scary for me, and at that moment I felt like I finally kind of belonged. I kind of found my place. Yeah, I felt really, really proud of myself. And also when I did get promoted, when I got a new title change and a promotion, that also felt really good, because it felt like I'm on a path and I can kind of see where I'm going. And even if this is not the path for me right now, this is at least going to take me somewhere, you know. It also made me feel like, as a kid, and even as an adult, I put myself down quite a bit. Maybe say to myself, you're not smart enough, you're not good enough to get to those steps. You're not smart enough to create your organization. You're not, smart enough to get into that sales role. And I felt like a big part of the high of this year was realizing that all those times that I'd said that to myself was totally not true. And I think what I realized was that I'm a lot more resilient. I'm a lot more stronger than I've given myself credit for. It's nobody else has said anything. Nobody else has put me down. It's only been myself. And it made me realize that I also have to be nicer to me. And a large part of that too has been going to therapy. I'm very pro therapy. I believe everyone should go to therapy, and therapists need therapists, and their therapists need therapists, Realizing how much more capable I am has been the highlight of, I guess, this pandemic. And I guess the low point, really struggling with not seeing them now. It's been 2.5 years since I've seen them. I just bought a flight though to Toronto for September 11th to October 11th. So I'm very happy, but this has been really a struggle for me. My parents are getting older. My fear is that, they're going to get old and see them anymore. And just, the time that I got taken away from being around them. Still a struggle because I still haven't seen them. And, I worry about them because, there has been some health things in the past. So, the fear for me was that something would happen during the pandemic and I wouldn't be able to get home. Luckily, that wasn't the case. I would say that's been the lowest point for me, missing my mom. I miss my mom, I miss my dad, I miss my brother, my aunts, my grandmother, my uncle. I miss everybody, and I'm not ashamed to say it.
It's good to miss people. It means they hold a special place in our hearts.
They do.
You spoke about how you kept a positive attitudes through some of the more difficult moments. Can you share a little bit of, maybe some practical tips of how you're able to, in those moments where you're like, I'm just going to go and, bring myself down and actually say, no, I'm not. I'm going to find the positive side of this. How did you do that?
Yeah, so I have my own method of doing these things. And sometimes when I'm feeling really down, really negative, honestly, please don't judge me. I love watching reality television. And it's not to say that watching people makes me feel better about my life, but watching it. I also like watching, television, like funny shows that make me laugh. The other thing too is sometimes even like just going for a walk with a friend would really help. One of the things that we couldn't do so much during the winter that now I do a lot to help me feel better. And I suggest this for everybody. Anybody watching this, I really suggest is biking. Getting on your bike, going out into the countryside and just biking, because not only are you doing something so good for your body, but it is also affecting your head, and it affects everything. And I remember writing my thesis for my master's program, and my boyfriend had to drag me out on a bicycle, and it completely changed everything. So, during this pandemic, we've been biking like crazy, just trying to get out of the city into nature, seeing different parts of Berlin. But I really like biking. It builds the endorphins, honestly, and I feel so much better about everything. And sometimes even when I'm having a hard day at work, getting on my bike for 15 minutes and just going around the block, it changes you, really.
And biking in Berlin is actually very nice, because I have lived in Berlin in the past.
Okay, so yeah.
Biking, that was my weekend kind of mental tool, was always to bike around as well, because it is actually a great place to do. So as you look forward and you look to the right, I have my flights booked. There's maybe
walk coming up.
Summer's coming up. You have the event coming up.
Yeah.
What are you looking forward when these times are over? How do you think your new normal will be, and how will you join up the introvert and the extrovert?
That's an amazing question, Sarah. It's something I'm struggling with trying to figure out because the past few weekends I've been really busy now because things have opening, people are having birthday parties now, and I'm realizing how absolutely exhausted I am after these events. I'm like, I'm done, and I think going forward, and I think this is something important for everybody, is balance. I think finding your balance and being okay missing out on certain things is okay. You don't have to be there for everything. You don't have to be there for every party. You don't have to be there for every event. You don't have to. And sometimes it's best if, you're exhausted and your body's, kind of shutting down, to listen to what your body is saying and do that. It's okay. There will be other parties. There will be other birthdays. There will be other days to go shopping with your friends. There will be other dinners. For me now, I'm listening to myself more, and I'm saying, it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no. And I think that's something that the pandemic has taught me. And also that the introvert in me is also being more confident in saying to people is like, thank you for the invitation. Unfortunately, I'm really busy right now. I just don't have the time, but I'd love to see you another time. Maybe, I'll reach out to you in like a couple of weeks when I'm free, just things like that. Because like for me right now, I do have a lot of things going on, and they're all good things, but because there's so many things, it can become a little bit overwhelming. So just again, as we spoke, taking things one day at a time. One of the things that's helped me is having an agenda. So really organizing my days, my weeks, my life. But yeah, I think everything comes down to balance. And I think if anything, the pandemic has taught us that.
So we're close to finishing. I want to grab a little bit more of your wisdom before we go. Knowing what you know today, would you give yourself different advice going back to this time last year or March last year?
I would say not to have any expectations. I would say if you have no expectations, then you can't be disappointed.
It's gotta be that's gotta be high up on the list of solutions how to deal with this pandemic. And if you could one, and I'm sure there's many, what was the one biggest challenge that this pandemic has brought you?
I guess the biggest challenge is that it's felt like my life has been on pause for the past year and a half. It's felt like I can't make any decisions about the future. And it's felt like any decisions that I might make now might be based on COVID. And I'm trying to be smart about not making any COVID-based decisions. And when I say COVID-based decisions, I mean decisions based on the fact that we have been dealing with this now for a year and a half. I just don't want to jump into anything without really being kind of aware of all of the opportunities and all of the issues and everything surrounding that. So my biggest challenge has been just the time I've lost that I'll never get back. Just this it's like my life has plateaued during this time. So I'm engaged, so we couldn't really plan a wedding. It just everything just we were looking for an apartment, and that had to be done with. Obviously this my passion, my love, the swaps couldn't happen. Had to figure out a new way through that. I would say that was a challenge, but one that I definitely was happy to accept.
From all this,
my biggest lesson is patience. I think also the biggest lesson was to definitely have more empathy, empathize more, be more patient, be more understanding. Everybody's going through a completely different, situation than I am, and just be more aware. And I think that I've been able to successfully do that. Just, take myself out of me just thinking of how I want things to be, and really realizing that, so many people have so many other things going on. And, even the fact that, like, for example, the other day there was a man who came onto the U-Bahn or subway without wearing a mask. You should wear a mask. And I would say something to him, but at the end of the day, I just thought, I'm wearing my mask. I'm good. I don't want to, I don't know what this man's going on in his life. While I disagree with it, I'm going to just kind of keep to myself. And if other people have something to say, then they should say something to him. But for me, I was just trying to be like, I'm just going to do the right thing for me.
So let's finish with two small things.
Okay.
Surprise ones. So do you have a book that you recommend for 2021?
I do, actually. It's a book that I'm reading. I actually have it here. It's called Fashionopolis. It's all about like the fast fashion industry and sustainability, and it's very interesting. So I definitely suggest. The other book I would suggest, I believe it's called Daisy Jones and I can't remember the end of it. I read this last year, finished it in 2 days. I absolutely love the book.
Send it to me after and then I'll put it on the show notes.
Yeah. It's Daisy Jones and the Something.
I'm going to get that one for the summer. What is one word for 2021?
Tolerance.
Oh, I love that one. That's new here. Thank you so much. It's been great to have you up the podcast. We went for a bit longer today, but I think it was all worth it.
Thank you so much, Sarah. It was so much fun.
Yes, and good luck, safe travels, and I hope to meet you virtually again.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much, and thank you for having me here. This was so much fun and such a great opportunity.
Thank you. I had such a great time speaking to Jenna today. She is so incredibly passionate about Berlin Clothing Swap and the sustainable fashion movement. It is inspiring to see how she did not give up after her first event had just one person, and how she pushed forward and found ways to bring the movement to life very successfully. Jenna has also shared more about life through the pandemic and the hard balance between the introvert that loved staying home and the extrovert that really just wanted to go out. I resonate with that struggle. At the end, Jenna left me with a reflection, and one that we all may need to see more of in 2021. Her chosen word for 2021 is tolerance. After such polarized behaviors the world has seen through the last few years, this is certainly one I have in my wish list. What was your biggest takeaway today? Share your thoughts and reach out online. I would love to hear from you. Before I go, a special credit to Alice Stansfield, who continues to make us sound and look even better and give life to this podcast. Until next time, and I get to do this.